it seems like a funny topic to cover and for everyone to show up for, but it's a big deal. Depending on the type of organization, there needs to be some planning involved around it. So that's what we're going to cover today. We're going to talk about what's all the fuss about with this change. There are benefits to these network connected meters that we'll go over. What are the challenges of getting your meters connected? And we find it's different in every organization. And what resources are out there and where can you go for help? So first, let's talk about the evolution of postage meter funding. It's kind of funny. So originally, when postage meters came out around the 1920s time period, you had to go to the post office to fill them. And then up to then sometime in the 80s, they came out with a way to fill your postage meter over the phone, a remote meter resetting system. So you could hit some buttons on your phone and you could refill it. That the filling at the post office basically got stopped completely, where the post office said, we're no longer allowing you to bring meters into the post offices. That stopped in around 1995. And then from that time, basically everyone called up over the phone, and then there was an evolution to being able to just have your meter plugged in automatically. And I think that was sometime in the 2003-05 timeframe that it required everyone to sort of make sure that their meter could do it itself. Then from that point on, all meters have been filling, most of them through analog phone connections. The big change that's happening, you'll see, is that everything now has to move and be connected to the network in order to be filled, because those analog lines are going to be stopping. So what's the fuss about? So the main phone companies are, in some areas, are either stopping or threatening to stop analog phone service. And because of that, the postage meters are requiring that future meters get connected to the network, and that is fill and update rates. So those are the main things that people have these meters connected for, is to add postage and to get rate changes as they come up. So most postage meters, there's around 1.1 million postage meters in the United States. The majority of those are still connected to analog phone lines. And what's interesting is those analog phone lines cost $300 to $600 a year to maintain. Most companies are on digital phone networks. They're on, whether it's fiber optic or whether it's on VoIP or however they have it set up. So what they're keeping these analog phone lines around usually for very limited use. So most of the time these analog lines are for just the postage meter. Maybe there's a fax machine that's sitting next to it, but we're finding in most situations it's just for the postage meter that they're keeping these analog lines. And if you think about it, this line is used, to refill postage every 1 to 3 months if it's a low mid-volume site, and then once or twice a year as postage rates and updates to your meter come in. So it's not used that often. And in many cases, these analog line charges cost more than small level meters. So with connecting to the network, there are some benefits. So, not everything's a negative. There's obviously some positives to this. So the first is it's faster. So when you're doing connections with a digital connection, whether it's a postage refill, rate change, software updates, anything like that, it's much, much faster with a digital connection versus an analog line. Also, if for some reason you are sharing that analog phone line with a fax machine, there's no risk of an interruption from an incoming fax. Automatic rate updates. So when you're network connected, the rates automatically can get pushed to your mailing equipment, and they can get pushed and they can basically sit there until the next time you refill, and then they get pulled in. In some meters, higher end equipment, they automatically go there and they're automatically accepted. Web accounting. So this has been a huge deal over the last few years. It used to be if you wanted to track postage by multiple different cost centers, you could do it inside the meters. But if you wanted any real detail of the transaction history, or you had multiple sites you needed to connect, or you wanted to see the class detail, it was very difficult to do in meters. So you needed these PC-based accounting systems that were very expensive and sort of clunky. Now there's web accounting, which means you can go onto the vendor's website, log into your account, and you can see all of your accounting detail in one place. You can see your cost, your cost centers, the transaction details, the class level details, and it's a new development that the vendors have had, and it's much less expensive than those old accounting systems used to be. So the good news about it is, by having a network connection, the data flows much freer and quicker and more reliably than through the analog phone lines. There's a mailing vendor cost savings. So if you have older style machines, you used to be able to get a analog phone modem from the meter vendors to keep on those analog lines. And those analog phone modems were $100 to $400 per meter if you were charged it. but meters are no longer coming with analog modems, and there's, you're not going to be able to use those anymore. So that's part of a cost savings. The analog line fees, we were shocked when we figured out how much analog lines were costing sites. There are plenty, like the average is about $400 a year for an analog phone line after you tack on the fees and FCC charges and all that kind of stuff. So if you have a lot of machines scattered throughout the country, and these analog phone line fees can really add up. Mail class details. So now that you have your meter connected to the network, the machines, if you subscribe to certain services that most of the meter vendors offer now, you can get class level detail to see what classes of mail you're doing, like how many pieces you did over certain periods of time, to figure out if you can find savings. So some examples of those situations where people find the biggest savings are certified with return receipt. If you switch from filling out the green card to electronic, it saves $1.35 per piece. But it only makes sense to do if you're doing 30 or 40 or more a month. So by having this class detail, you can figure out where it makes sense. First class mail volumes. If you have enough volume that you could use a pre-sort service, or you could barcode mailings in-house, by being able to see that class level detail online in a much more concise manner, it gives you a way to see if there's savings available. And then priority and express mail, if you move from the retail class, just basically kicking out a meter tape, to moving into a full address, and I'll go into a little bit more detail on this, to the commercial rates, it saves up to 55% on your priority and express mail. So as you can see in these charts, there's two different main classes of packages, priority and express mail as an example. There's the retail rates and commercial rates. So, and you can see these rates as of January 22nd. So this picture down below explains it. So if you just kick out a meter tape and put it on a priority mail piece or an express mail piece, you get charged these retail rates. But through these network-enabled mailing systems, a lot of the vendors have shipping modules that allow you to type in the address and generate these 4x6 shipping labels. And when you run it through these shipping labels, you get the commercial rates, as you see here. And they're anywhere between 4 or 5% all the way up to 55% based on the class and the weight and the zone that it's going to. So on average, we usually tell clients it's about a 14% savings overall. Priority mail typically being the biggest class. But this is, with the growth in shipping, this is something that we're finding clients, are paying more attention to. Also, when you have this 4x6 shipping label, you're able to track it and have all the information in one place versus, having to just take a sticker on it and not having the same level of visibility in your packages. If you're interested in this, each vendor calls it something different. You can see the names below. FP calls it Ship It, Hassler calls it the Commercial Rate App, Neopost calls it NeoShip, and Pitney Bowes calls it SendPro. But those are the apps that can connect to the machines. They can get you these commercial-based rates, and they all require that you have network-connected devices. So the challenges of getting these meters connected. So what we're really talking about is getting a phone line like this. This is an analog phone connection that you see in this phone 1 box down here. And switching from plugging your meter into a box like that to something that says Ethernet or network connected. It's a thicker cord. Most of you have probably seen it. So the challenges are, for some people, it sounds complicated. We're going to hopefully make it simpler in the next few minutes. There's not a network connection near the machine. We have some answers for that. Firewall network security issues. This is the biggest one that we find companies encounter. And then what if you have multiple sites? So we have companies, our clients have 10, 20, 50, 100, 1,000, 2,000 sites. So for them, this is a huge issue to try to get all these meters connected onto the network. And we'll talk about some strategies that you can use for that. So the first question, and I'm sorry this sounds obvious, is there a network connection near the meter? So here's the most common solution. So first off, best case, of course, yes, there's a network connection close by, great win. So second, and I know this sounds stupid and obvious, but first is, can you get a longer cord? So cords for network connections come in any different size. So obviously you don't want cords running around your office, but that's certainly like the first CHED solution. If there is a network connection, but there's no open ports, the ports are being used by other devices, can you get a splitter that looks like this, that basically takes one port and makes it into 2 or 3 or 5? Most phone systems today are IP, are internet-based, so they're connected to the network. Many phones will have an extra port that you can use to plug things into. So basically the phone acts like a network splitter. So the question is, do you have those types of connections on your phones? Most mailing equipment will be near a phone, and most phones are connected to the network these days. Also look at multifunctional devices, your copiers, your printers. Many of those are connected to the network today, and they may have extra ports you can use on the back as an external port. The mailing vendors offer options for Wi-Fi connectors, sort of like basically it's, the mail machine, it connects the mail machine through your Wi-Fi to make sure that you can get a connection. But there is an extra charge for those ports, for those Wi-Fi connectors. And if not, if worse comes to worse, can IT add a network drop close to the unit? And we find that that's sometimes what you have to do. These are the most common networking issues that we find. So the biggest is I haven't received approval to connect the meter to the network by the IT department. So if you have a lot of meters, I certainly recommend you have conversations with the network department, the IT department, to talk about a strategy about getting these devices on the network. The network port data line is not set up, so sometimes the port that's sitting there isn't active and you need to get it set up. The network administrator hasn't opened the port data line to communicate to the network, like we talked about. And then you have missing information. So when you set up the meter, you need to know certain things, like you need to know the IP address, the subnet mask, a default gateway. So this is a little bit more technical than we're going to get into in this webinar. But on our website, we have common technical definitions for all these items and problem-solving tips that you can log into. So if you go to postaladvocate.com on our FAQ page, you can find out definitions to these things and a lot more detail that could help you. So steps to connect your meter. So first, follow the steps on your mailing equipment's operator installation guide. So every mail machine is different, so we can't just put up a set of guides because every one of them does it slightly differently. But the guides that the mailing vendors provide are all very thorough and detailed in this area. Plug the meter into the network and test to see if you get a connection. So first and foremost, follow the steps, plug it in, and see if you get a connection. If no connection, what we recommend is reach out to your IT network department first to see if you can get, if they can access the port, if they're seeing the device, typical problems that they should be able to help you diagnose. If you can't get help from them, call your mailing vendor for support if it's still not connected. We recommend trying your IT department before the mailing vendor, because what we find is many times the mailing vendors are going to send you right back to your IT department, so you might as well skip that step, work with them to see if there's any issues with the network connection where you're trying to plug in, and then call the mailing vendor, afterwards, for any other problem-solving tips. For new installations on equipment renewals, smaller units are typically self-installable. So, things that are like your basic postage meters and things like that, typically the operator will be the person setting them up and following these network steps. If you have larger equipment, those are typically installed by the mailing vendors who can offer support when they're on site doing the installation. Multi-location challenges. So what we find is, like I said, we're managing implementations into the thousands of machines, and every one of these is different. We have some that, especially in the financial and healthcare sectors and insurance, that nothing gets on their network without like a process document, approvals and multiple stages of internal IT, working with internal IT. So, and in some companies, you just plug them in and they work. So it's different in every organization based on how they treat their network. So, but regardless of that, and even if you're only a single site, this is what we recommend as the steps to, get control of it. So the first is create an inventory of your equipment. So you want to have a list of every machine that you have throughout your organization, and then which sites are already connected to the network and which aren't. Many of the high volume units from the main mailing vendors have required for the last 3 to 5 years, 3 to 6 years actually, that you have those meters connected. And so you may, if you have some high volume equipment out there today, you may have machines already on your network, which is the best place to start, because then at least some of the, it gives you some proof that you can work within your IT department and that the mailing vendors can be approved. Okay. Then work with your IT to make sure that meters are approved to be on the network. So they may have to do some testing. They may have to get things certified. They may have to open up some ports. They may have to do some steps in their internal infrastructure to make sure that these things can work for the future. When you're trying to figure out which sites you do first, what we recommend is look at your expiration dates for your equipment. We recommend, because when you're doing this, in some cases it's very easy. You just plug a network cable into the back and it works. Many machines, though, don't have the proper cables or will require modems or adapters and things like that. So it may make sense to renew equipment with updated machines and install the updated equipment versus just trying to go through the older stuff first. So the first thing we recommend is trying to do the newer equipment. The equipment that is about to come up that's being placed brand new. Focus on that. Look at equipment coming up in the next 12 months for renewals, or any older owned rented equipment. And those are your first stop of things that you want to try to update and then get on the network. And then for the remaining sites, update locations that have service issues. Many may not be getting the support. So what we're hearing from the mailing vendors is that if you call up and you say, look, my meter isn't connecting to your data center, I can't add postage, they're going to first ask you, do you have is your machine connected to the network? And if your machine is not connected to the network, they're going to say, in many cases what we're hearing is they're not going to offer the same level of support. They're going to say, you need to get your machine onto the network, and then we're happy to give you support, because they're not supporting the old style analog connections anymore in many cases. Every vendor is different. So we recommend that if the sites that you have service issues, that you look at updating those sites right away and getting those things fixed. And then update remaining locations as time allows or as they renew. So let's say you can't get your meter onto the network, and there are going to be some situations where, maybe you're a financial institution and the IT department says, we absolutely cannot get those meters onto the network. Maybe it's a government agency and you say, look, we cannot allow this inside our firewall. So if that happens, there are a couple options. First off, the mailing vendors can offer some of the mailing vendors offer 3G, 4G connectors, which is, think of it like a separate data plan you might have on a mobile phone that can be connected to the meter. So the meter is dialing out, it has its own data plan associated with it, and it's filling its meter without accessing your network. Some of the mailing vendors offer a mobile phone connector. So it's basically like a cord that can connect to the back of a mobile phone, where you could use that mobile phone's data plan and do the connection that way. Wi-Fi connection to your visitors area. So some organizations have a Wi-Fi hotspot. So if visitors come in, or if you have contract workers, they access the public Wi-Fi versus the network Wi-Fi, or what's behind the firewall. So that could be an option through those Wi-Fi modems to connect into. And then for low to mid volume sites, another option to consider is PC postage. PC postage means that you don't need a meter. It's a subscription you sign up for. You access your postage on the web and you generate sheets of stamps, or you can print directly onto the envelope. And it's a great solution for smaller mid-level mailers, and you can access it just through the web. So you don't need to have a network connection in order to use it. You just have to have web access. And these programs start at about $16 per month. And they're great for multi-location organizations because they wrap up all your data in actually what we think is, in some areas, like more detail than low-end meters do. So it's something to consider. Resources where you can go for help. So if you need help from us, if it's a simple question, we're happy to answer it. If you need more like detailed, dedicated support to get this done, we do this for our clients all the time, and we're happy to help. Our website has the FAQs that we talked about, which provides a quick step-by-step instructions to simplify the process. And you can go to our link, and we're going to provide this presentation to everyone on the call, so you'll have access to these links for postaladvocate.com. And then all the mailing vendors have really good websites with documentation on this. Obviously, they're putting a lot of focus onto making sure this transition goes smoothly for them. But the vendor websites are a great place to go as well. So if you need help from experts, I just want to give you, a little bit about what we do in a little bit more detail. So we manage the mailing equipment spends for Fortune 1000 companies or large organizations that have big fleets of equipment throughout the US and Canada. So today we're managing a fleet of about 70,000 pieces of mailing equipment. And what we're the most proud of is that on average, we save our clients 60% on that equipment. So what they were paying before we get involved to after, on average, is 60% less. And our average client savings has been almost $700,000. Everyone from our team came from the mailing industry. We have over 200 years of experience. We provide a web dashboard for our clients so that they can see the details of every piece of equipment, every postage refill, every activity that's happened on their account that we feel is much more detailed than what the mailing vendors offer on their websites. We have recovered, we saved our clients in total $27 million, and that includes over $5 million of lost postage that we've helped our clients find, vendor overcharges and fees that people didn't know they were paying that we've been able to either get credited, stopped for the future, or refunded. What we do for clients is, for any client who's interested, we offer a no-cost analysis where we'll go over soup to nuts what's going on inside your organization and quantify what the savings are available. And all we need to do that is a one-page limited agency agreement that just says that we're working on your behalf. It's a very simple document. Copies of any vendor invoices or an accounts payable export or a location list or an equipment inventory list, anything that you have, we have ways to pull this whole thing together. Then we work with the current vendors, and the vendors' websites to build like a detailed population report of all your spends, including end of lease dates, postage volumes, costs. We analyze that spend to see where there's billing errors, compliance issues, overcharges, lost postage. We find savings opportunities, and then we present the findings to you here after we finish the analysis. And then if you decide to move forward, we'll go and we'll submit the credit request and lost postage and fees. We'll help you negotiate a pricing contract, including an MSA if you'd like, a master service agreement, as well as a catalog. Then we work with each location to help them validate that they have the equipment that the vendors are showing, right-size the equipment, and terminate equipment that's not needed. And so we're managing that entire process for the client. And then we present savings opportunities to the client for a review. We give a web dashboard that gives visibility to all of this, so on an ongoing basis, so you see it. And then we provide ongoing support, so we stay with the client because renewals and equipment transactions are always happening, and we stay engaged. So as the next renewals and the next leases expire, we're there to help. The best part that our clients like is if we don't find any savings, we're free, because we typically work off a percentage of savings model. Some clients we're on a retainer with, but most clients, we're on a retainer that if we don't find any savings, we're free, so there's no risk. We haven't found that ever. Like I said, our average is 60%, but we try to make it so it's easy for the client and there's no risk for them. So we try to do these types of educational webinars, not that you need to use us, certainly we'd love it if you called us, but the most important thing is that you get the information about what's going on and that you at least have the tools to be able to do these things on your own. So on May 17th, we're having a webinar at 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time called The Main Event, PC Postage versus Postage Meters, where we're going to go over the differences between enterprise PC postage and postage meters so you can figure out what are the differences and what may make more sense for you. On June 14th, we're having another webinar called The Top 10 Common Mail Mistakes and How It Can Affect Your Bottom Line and what strategies you can do to avoid those mistakes and hopefully save money for the future. So we want to open it up to any questions that you may have, and we hope that this type of format and information was helpful for everybody.
Thanks, Adam. So if anyone has any questions, you can put up your hand or you can type the question in the chat box. Go ahead, Anthony.
Does customers have to buy new equipment?
They don't have to buy new equipment. Good question, Anthony. It depends on the age of the equipment. Most equipment can be retrofitted to have a network connection. Some machines may have the network port already. Some machines may require that you have to buy an adapter from the vendor in order to be able to connect them. So it depends. But machines don't have to be replaced in order to do this typically.
Because that's a really big expense for a company, especially like my company, that has to replace at least 5 or 6 of them.
Absolutely. So it's always good to look at what your renewal options are on equipment first to see if potentially new equipment might be less expensive in some cases, and that happens.
Okay, we have another question here. What date do we have to do this by?
Every mailing vendor is different. We've heard communications that some vendors are not supporting analog phone connections if you call in for a service problem. So what that means is if you call in and say, look, my machine's not working and you're connected to an analog phone line, they're going to push you in order to get service to have network connections. So, but I haven't heard the mailing vendors say you absolutely we will not support an analog phone line and you cannot connect anymore. We haven't heard that statement. We've just heard that if there's a problem, they may not support it to the same level.
Okay, what time is the June 14th presentation? It's at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And you can actually register on www.postaladvocate.com.
I think there are a couple other hands, Doris, that I saw.
Kathy, go ahead.
Hi, Kathy, are you out there?
Oh, sorry. I did not have a question. I must have just hit it by accident.
No problem. Thanks for joining.
Another question. What needs to be completed on the USPS customer gateway to allow these meters to print priority labels?
I don't believe it's on the USPS customer gateway per se. It's usually a subscription service that you would have through one of the mailing vendors to be able to print to print the 4x6 shipping label. And so I don't believe you need to do anything through the gateway on that. I could be mistaken, but I don't believe that. I've never heard that you have to go into the gateway in order to do it. It's really just a question of having basically a PC postage tool that can generate those labels, and that gets you the commercial rates. I think I see another question, Doris.
Go ahead, Robert.
Hi, Robert. Did you have a question? Robert? He must have hit it by accident.
Hello?
Hi, Robert.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, yeah, I just get it. Is there any timeline, do you think, that when they're going to be moving the meters to a digital platform from analog? I mean, how long down the road are we looking?
So all the mailing vendors are saying that on any new renewal, so if you're renewing new equipment, they all have only, what we're hearing is mostly they only have network connections. So anytime you replace equipment, it's going to have the network connection. On the current stuff that you have out there, it's just going to depend if you have service problems of the level of support that you're going to get unless you connect to the network. So that's sort of the big challenge. We haven't heard like a dead set date from the vendors that says, if you're on analog, we're not going to support you anymore. You have to be off. We will not transmit that way. We haven't heard that from the vendors yet, but it's really the question if you have a problem.
Okay.
The bigger issue is, does the phone companies like stop the analog service in certain markets that makes it where you don't have a choice?
Right. Okay, thank you.
Did Linda have a question, Doris?
Go ahead, Linda.
I do. Thanks, Doris, and thanks, Adam, for a great webinar. So just to add
And
to
just
some
for
of the
everyone who knows,
questions,
I apologize. This is Linda Kish, who's from Pitney Bowes, who's one of the top experts in this, probably in the country. So she's a great person to actually have feedback from this.
Thank you, Adam. So I just wanted to add to Adam's comments that there is not a hard and fast stop date, but that the telcos continue to lobby for the ending of the universal service obligation to provide analog connectivity. And 13 states have already approved it. So what you'll find is outages or lack of service on a rolling basis go forward as that legislation continues to be approved. So what we're sharing with clients is plan for this. It's just like the cable companies who said, you got to switch out your cable box because we're not supporting analog because of all the additional data required for you to stream videos and movies, etc. And as the postal authorities worldwide want additional data about your postage usage, and as Adam pointed out, your accounting and all that data streaming to the web, the digital connectivity becomes even more important. So there's not a hard and fast date, but we're suggesting clients plan on it with their IT departments for their 2018 budgets as they plan. Whether you're a small or medium business or an enterprise account that looks like a small or medium business where it's multi-location. So I think Adam did a great job at capturing the issues and challenges. And we're just finding ongoing rolling outages and the ongoing decline of analog as a technology in general.
Thank you, Linda. Thanks for being on.
Thank you, Adam.
Any other questions?
Well, thank you, everybody. We really appreciate everybody being on the call, and I hope this information was helpful. Have a nice afternoon.